The Tree of Life is a map of the universe, God and the self. And in it, we can find the bisexuality and transgenderism and non-binariness of our soul. On the Tree of Life, we have Sephiroth, or worlds, spheres, that correspond to different stages of manifestation and planets in the universe, a map of the cosmos. We also have paths on the tree connecting each Sephiroth. There are 22 paths corresponding to the 22 major arcana, and 10 Sephiroth corresponding to the aces through 10 in the minor arcana. The names and titles of the Sephiroth and paths are in Hebrew, and Hebrew has gendered words, much like Latin languages, like my first language, Portuguese. Also, Spanish, French, and many other languages have gendered words. For example, let's take the Fool card. In English, it's called the Fool. The Fool can be anyone of any gender. They are the Fool. But in Portuguese, for example, we would translate that to o louco or a louca. Notice the O and the A. O referring to o louco as a masculine person, and a louca, A, as being a feminine person. Now, I'll talk about the Tree of Life, and I'll bring the Hebrew as we go along. The tree consists of 3 columns. The left column is called the pillar of severity, and the feminine pillar. The right pillar is called the pillar of mercy, or the masculine pillar. Now, here's where we start seeing the hermaphroditic nature of our soul. The Tree of Life is meant to represent the soul in some way. And the middle pillar is called the pillar of balance or equilibrium. And it's the combining forces of both the left and the right pillars. Think of the yin-yang symbol. The black aspect is the feminine, and the white aspect is the masculine. However, one does not exist without the other, and we find each aspect inside the other. The yin-yang symbol, much like the Tree of Life, is in constant movement, creating a mixing of the black and white, a combining of the opposing forces to create balance in our universe. And since the universe is a mirror of the self, that combining, that alchemy of forces happens within us as well, regardless of if you identify as male, female, or truly anything in between. Let's take the left feminine pillar. The top Sephiroth is called Bina. A word ending in ah, is usually considered feminine in Hebrew. Bina is ruled by Saturn and represents the divine mother, the dark womb of the mother, the energy from which all life emerges. Now, let's take a step down on the same column and arrive at Gabora, the red Sephiroth. Gabora is ruled by Mars, which most of us associate Mars with a masculine energy, war and chaos. Mars is represented by the Tower card as well in the tarot, and we can see a lot of chaos in this image. However, notice that Gabora also ends in ah, which makes this a feminine name, and it's also placed in the middle of the feminine pillar. This leads me to think of warrior goddess-like energy, like Kali, Freya, or Oya, a fierce divine feminine goddess, kind of a lioness mother that will draw blood to feed and protect their young. Now we get to the bottom Sephiroth in the left feminine pillar, Hod. Now, Hod is also traditionally a masculine word ending in Od or Od. And Hod is ruled by the planet Mercury, also traditionally associated with a male deity like Mercury, Hermes, and Thoth. So now things don't seem to fit so nicely. in the feminine side of the tree. So what does that mean? How could this add a queer aspect to not only Mercury, Gebura, but the pillar as a whole? And now let's travel to the right side of the pillar of the tree. To the right pillar of the tree. Maybe this will make things right. Right at the top of the masculine pillar, we have the Sephiroth called Chokmah, which, as we see, also ends in ah, making it a feminine word. Chokmah is the benevolent father figure. This is, for example, Odin, the All-Father. So now we have conflicting ideas. Chokmah is a feminine word used to represent the supernal father. Going down one Sephiroth on the right pillar, we have Hesed, ending in ed, making it a masculine word. Hesed is ruled by the all-loving and forgiving planet Jupiter. And now we go down one more Sephiroth and we're met with Netzach, ruled by the planet Venus, a traditionally feminine planet, right? We all know the goddess Venus / Aphrodite. Netzach is ending in ach, ach. Now notice that this is not ah, it has a C in the middle, making it a masculine word. Much of our understanding of gender and sexuality is still influenced by Victorian era, when sex was considered unnatural and shameful. Sex was best not discussed in public, or even let alone in private probably. Now, in contrast, today the conversation around sex, gender, and the sexual spectrum is much more open, much more available to people. The views of the past have caused much sexual repression and discomfort, even today, along with depression and low self-esteem. And today we're finally talking about what the cosmos has been telling us all along, that we are all of it, that God is sexuality and queerness, that the idea of the male bearded God is still very much present in our minds, and yet we know that spirit has no gender. Many cultures in the past have already known this. Perhaps queer people, really anyone on the spectrum, from cisgender gay people to non-binary, non-conforming to trans people, are physical manifestations of the gender fluidity of God. They are the physical representation of the divine self, alchemy. One of the Hermetic principles is the principle of gender, that everything has its feminine and masculine aspects, which sounds a lot like the principle of polarity, which states that everything is dual, everything has its opposite, which also I think in turn sounds a lot like the law of correspondence, which states as above, so below, as within, so without. Side note, the truth of the 7 Hermetic laws is that they're all the same law. So it seems to me that queer individuals are wanting to have their outside world reflect how they feel inside, as within, so without. And in turn, they're showing the outside world that people, and by extension, God, are much more complex and intricate and fascinating than we initially believe. As above, so below.